Hello and welcome to What's Next. It's the Indy NXT Road Series here. We're back once again from the Sebring International Raceway. And we've got a bit of a wet track here. Not uncharacteristic for Florida to have a bit of rain going on in the spring and summertime as we are in the Sunshine State. About as far south in the United States as you can get is the state of Florida. And it gets a bit wet down by the ocean here in Florida. Sophie, we're going to be in for quite the interesting races. This track is very tricky, very bumpy. It's a track that IndyCar uses for testing for street course conditions, given just how rough this track is. And you throw a little water on it, we're going to be in for quite the ride here tonight.
Yeah, this is going to be a track that even in the dry, it is super tricky and it will catch drivers out, particularly in turn number 1. It'll be fairly common to see people run wide there. There can kind of be a part where the field kind of concertinas up and there's some contact made down in the hairpin. And then, of course, there is Sunset, the last corner at Sebring, and that has a lot of bumps, particularly on the exit, Jacob, that can catch a driver out. I was currently watching Daniel Falkingham, who won a race previously in the wet at Road Atlanta, and he went straight on at that hairpin, just to give you an idea how tricky it is now that once you add water to Sebring.
Yeah, and filming the track guide this week, that hairpin's definitely in the corner that's going to catch out drivers the most, I think, barring kind of the final corner here as we watch Falkingham navigate that right there. That one's another tricky one as well as he gets on the power and almost goes for a spin there. And that's going to be the key here is I think just keeping the car under wraps on the power in these slick conditions. There's not going to be a ton of opportunity for drivers to really second guess their throttle inputs here. They're going to have to be cautious and commit to their applications here as they navigate this 3+ mile track in Sebring, Florida, as we watch Falkingham get ever closer to that back straightaway here that'll lead towards that infamous Sunset Bend.
Yeah, it is really tricky to get the power down in these cars in the dry, but in the wet, it's amplified, Jacob. And so they're going to be trying to get as much temperature in those wet weather Firestones as they can so that they can have as much grip available to them as possible, as Daniel Falkingham's now about to start his flyer.
Here he comes underneath the Michelin bridge. He'll head across the start-finish line underneath one more pedestrian bridge with Lexus bannering and head off into a very tricky turn number 1. We'll see just how much speed he can carry here. Looks like a bit of a rough exit, kind of as the puddles pull up in the middle of the track there. He'll head down towards the next left-hander here. Grab a bit of the curve on the left, try to stay off the puddle on the right, and then navigate through the center portion of this track here, and then get back on the power as he heads down towards the hairpin.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing with wet weather driving is you typically don't want to stay on the rubbered in bit, Jacob, and then you have to cross over. You see him braking offline here, and then he's going to have to cross back over onto the slicker portion of the track, particularly here in this hairpin section, so it's going to be real tricky to get the power down.
And here he'll come towards that right-hander that we kind of pointed out on his warm-up lap here from Sebring. He's going to navigate this relatively easily. He's going to get on the power once again. Bit of a slide there once again through the left-hander, and we'll do the same in the next lap. He'll have to set up for the double right here. It's kind of a slight right into a hard right as he navigates that and gets back on the power. Big difference between this and the bigger Indy car in this fixed setup environment is we do not have the option to adjust any of the throttle maps on this machine to maybe try to make that ramp up a little bit easier to navigate. We just get put with the, I believe it's a just straight linear throttle map here in the IL-15 in these fixed setup series. So just another obstacle, or I guess a tool not in the driver's hands that they can play with to try to ease that on-throttle condition.
Yeah, one of the things you can do to maybe help yourself out if you have software for your pedals like Moza Pit House or whatever the Fanatec equivalent would be, Jacob, you can maybe force the throttle map to be more gradual by doing that on the pedal side, but that's a little bit of an extreme. As Falkingham goes P1, Andre Castro, I believe, invalidated his last lap. Wasn't even on a flyer, sorry. So we'll see what Castro can do to respond. Castro, no slouch in the wet. Neither is Jarrett Corey, defending champion, returning to the series as he goes for an off-track excursion in the hairpin, trying to set a lap time in this wet weather quali session.
Yeah, he is the previous winner here at Sebring. That occurred at the end of 2025 season 4 as the final round of that season here from Sebring. He took the win over Carter Lundy and USF Juniors real world driver Victor Couto. The gap there, I believe, was 3.5 or so, 5.7 seconds rather, between Corey and Lundy in that one. We'll see if he's able to go for the double and pick up another win here from Sebring, but he's going to have to get a qualifying lap in first as we continue to ride with Daniel Falkingham, who sets the pole time as it stands. And I'm seeing a couple names near the top of the timing sheet that are going to play maybe a bit of a factor in this season's championship. So let's take a quick look at those point standings here. You'll see Giovanni Blackerby tops the table so far on 1,129 points, followed up by Rafael Lippi, Jake King, Takumi Numata, and reigning series champ Jarrett Corey. You've got the likes of Andre Castro, Craig Burke, Louis Tolan, William Lindbergh, Matthew Breton, David Clymer, Aiden Kale. Aiden Kale in the field tonight. Jacob Collins, that's me. I'm not in the field tonight. I'm bringing you this race from the booth, but there's David Clennon in 14th. He's currently sitting 7th on the board. Then you got the likes of Sergio Galisto, Ty Keela, Gregory Kohler, Eunice Kiala that we've seen a couple times throughout the season alongside Jared Alexander and Jorge Sarvalios in that 20th spot. And I believe Ivan Machado Perez currently leads the Indy NXT iRacing Series point standing, so he's putting in a decent effort here in the Road Series this season as well. But we'll get back to action on track as Falkingham has barely got the pole now over Aiden Kale. A little under a tenth separating those two.
Yeah, it is incredibly tight at the sharp end of the field. The top three within just over a tenth of each other. So that being Falkingham, Kale, and Numata. And then, of course, you've got Giovanni Blackerby, another tenth just behind that. And then Logan Edwards is a decent way adrift, along with Andre Castro.
Yeah, we just caught the I-5G machine cross the line for his second flying lap. Good enough for fourth. That'll put him ahead of Blackerby, just barely 13 thousandths the separation between Edwards and Blackerby for fourth and fifth. We're still waiting for Andre Castro to get his second lap in, alongside the likes of Robson Cardoso has yet to get a time down. John Wells, Alan Gomez-Selfa as well in the field getting times down. And big surprise, Jarrett Corey is not going to get a time in, it looks like, in qualifying here. He'll have to start from deep in this field. We'll see if he can work his way through with relative ease, but that likely will take him out of a winning condition, barring some mistakes from drivers up near the front of the field.
Yeah, and one of the things that wanted to call out there is Logan Edwards picked up a lot on that second lap, and that kind of makes sense because if this is your first couple of laps on a wet track, you need to find out where the grip is. And normally there's two ways you can find out. One is by driving it and underdriving it a little bit, and the other is by crashing. And it's a lot easier to improve upon a time if you have a time in the first place. So it would make sense to run a lap a little easier, Jacob, at the start.
Yeah, we'll watch drivers get to the grid now following qualifying. It looks like everybody's going to opt for wet tires. Nobody's taking the gamble of trying to make it through this one on dry tires. The track is wet, but we are not expecting additional precipitation throughout the 12 laps here tonight, so that will at least ease the factors of the track changing due to additional precipitation, but we'll see how the track maybe dries out slowly over time as the wet weather tires will kind of kick up some of those puddles around as drivers look to cool those things off over the course of tonight's running, Sophie.
Yeah, for sure, Jacob. And one of the advantages of having all this water on the track, Jacob, is there won't be large clouds of dust that's become the hallmark of iRacing lately as this pace lap commences. Field getting lined up behind that Porsche iRacing pace car, Jacob. It's going to be a long lap, so we'll have plenty of time to go through the starting lineup. But let's do that now, shall we?
Yeah, let's get that starting lineup underway here, and it will be Daniel Falkingham in the Lucky Charms machine from the pole with a 156.615. He'll be lined up alongside last week's winner in Aiden Kale with a 156.698 for the driver of the 6. Takumi Numata is back in the field once again in the 3rd spot. He'll line up for Machine on the inside of row 2. Logan Edwards, we've been informed, has a new paint scheme. We'll try to get that in here before the pace lap concludes, but he'll roll off 4th for Team I-5G. You got Giovanni Blackerby in that shell livery, rolling off in 5th alongside John Wells in the 6th spot. Andre Castro will roll off 7th. The winner from Darlington in the Indy NXT Oval Series will start 7th. David Clennon alongside him. Luis Vasquez and Hunter Smith will round out the top 10. We'll move back to Andre's teammate and Chris Wetson, 11th alongside Kel Hogan, sporting the Dennis Hauger livery from last season. We saw Dennis out last week at Indianapolis. It was good to see him out in force. He did a solid running in, I believe, the IndyCar race last weekend as well. We've got Ty Keela for Rogue Racing. He'll line up 13th alongside Doug Hoyzel. Jarrett Corey for Rogue Racing, the reigning series champ, will start 15th. First car not getting a time in tonight. He'll line up alongside Robson Cardoso in the 8 machine. Alan Gomez Selfa in the 14 will line up 17th. Kevin O'Hara in the 18 machine. I believe that's going to be the current scheme for Max Garcia in the Indy NXT Series. And then you've got Brendan McNulty rounding out tonight's 19-car field from Sebring.
Yes, and Logan Edwards chiming in chat saying, Jacob, please refresh. I guess it is not showcasing for you just yet, the new paint for Logan Edwards.
Try to get that in here in due time.
One thing I do want to highlight real quick here is a lot of drivers really aren't warming their tires too much. They're probably dragging their brakes, Jacob, and one of the things that's going to be interesting is to see how these cars handle that turn number 1, because that's a high commitment corner, and on cold tires it's very easy to see maybe someone catching a puddle and possibly having an incident, that or a braking kerfuffle into the hairpin. I believe I took part in a broadcasted race here in the wet. It did not go very well for me. I believe I got my rear wing knocked off before we even got to the green. So it is certainly a tricky track to drive in the wet.
There we go. There's an I-5G livery for Logan Edwards on that IL-15 now. We got that sorted out. Fortunately, we get a long pace lap here from Sebring because we got to go all the way from the start-finish line all the way around. Vault 9 chiming in the chat. They've also seen Castro racing in the Lotus 79 Radical SR10 series. Castro's one that gets around. I saw him pick up a win earlier tonight in the Gen 4 NASCAR series from Dover. He's very much a jack of all trades and seemingly a master of a good number of them. We'll see if he can pick up another win on the evening here tonight as he'll roll off 7th in tonight's race.
Yes, as they're now rounding the Le Mans corner onto the back straightaway here. This is going to be a critical corner to get right for these drivers because it leads down this back straightaway into one of the best passing opportunities outside of that hairpin, and that is Sunset, the iconic final corner here at Sebring International Raceway.
Watch these 19 IL-15s navigate the back portion of the course. Strength of field tonight was, I believe, a little over 3,300, so not a shabby field in the slightest here. Ready to take on a wet and wild Sebring International Raceway. Though round Sunset Bend, the pace car will pull off in due time. Daniel Fulkingham will get control of the field with Aiden Kale alongside underneath the Michelin Bridge, and we're underway from Sebring.
Yeah, Kale tucked it in real tight. Oh, there's trouble already! One of the cars launched up in the back, seems to be unaffected. Field goes in through turn number 1.
Edwards is around.
Oh, Edwards. Oh, not much time to showcase that I-5G livery. As tangled already. Come back to that in a second.
Oh, at least watch the drivers navigate their way through these opening couple of corners, get to the hairpin, then we'll try to figure out what happened on the start there. Because it looks like that was going to be Andre Castro. It looks like John Wells was the one that popped up into the air on the initial start. We'll double check that in due time as Castro's alongside Hunter Smith. He'll run wide at the hairpin and be under fire from Wells now.
Yeah, so far everyone through the hairpin cleanly. They now navigate Cunningham through this section into Tower is the corner name for the last of those right-handers. Let's go back and look at that incident with Logan Edwards, Jacob, and see what happened there.
I'll try to roll the cameras back here. So here they come on the initial start. We'll try to catch the cameras back forward, actually. Get a bit further ahead here. Went a little too far back here. So we'll at least watch the run past the start-finish line for Edwards.
Oh!
So here they come off the final corner. The green flag's going to wave here shortly, and we're going to see John Wells' yellow and blue machine pop up into the air almost instantly, as it looks like whoever started fourth or second on the outside there, I believe that's Edwards, makes contact there. I'm wondering if that contributed to whatever happens down at the other end of the straight here for the I-5G driver. He's on the outside coming into the corner.
A four-wide situation, Jacob. It looks like Takumi Numata and Aiden Kale were just kind of come together a little bit there, and that just pushes Kale into Edwards, and Edwards just gets the worst of it.
Yeah, he'll go around, make contact with the tire bundle on the outside of the corner there, and fall down the order. Meatball flag for him. Not a long-lived run for him. Fortunately, it looks like the front of the field has mostly sorted itself out now, as Daniel Falkingham leads Giovanni Blackerby by 2+ seconds. And then it's Takumi
the big
Numata.
mover. And then Ty Keela from 13th on the grid. And then Andre Castro sits in 5th, Aiden Kale in 6th, followed by John Wells, who had that pop up in the air, and then Hunter Smith is putting him under fire.
Yeah, we'll take a look further back, as then you've got David Clennon in this kind of blue and white IL-15. He'll be followed by Luis Vasquez. Jarrett Corey has worked his way up to 11th after starting 15th. He'll be looking to crack into the top 10 here relatively quickly. Numata falls down the order.
Yeah, Numata went off in that last corner there. That was why I called out trouble. He has a big moment under the brakes, gets up on the curve. That's a painted surface. That's really not something you want to touch. And he just backs it in hard, gets where his wing is still attached, but very damaged. And definitely has wheel damage, I believe. He is going to have a meatball. And that's likely going to hamper his chances. I see some big toe on that rear end.
Yeah, it looks like he got onto the brakes and then just shot to the left into the puddle, into the painted curbing there, and went around backwards into the tire barrier.
And Aiden Kale's odyssey continues as he got into the back of Ty Keela into the sunset. Ty Keela is currently being passed by Castro, and Kale thought maybe I can make it 2 for 1 and just plowed into the back of Keela. Keela looks to be okay, and he's going to continue onward. Kale spun around and tumbled down the order, currently residing in 9th.
Yeah, it goes for a big slide into sunset. Fortunately, all the cars around him able to take evasive action around him. Maybe just a bit too eager of a move, as Keela was fairly committed to the inside of the track there, and that's a tough corner to get through by yourself, let alone with other cars in close proximity. And Kale just misjudges the entry there on the back of the Rogue Racing driver, and he'll fall down the order to 9th. We'll see if he can charge his way back through the field as we work lap number 3 of 12 here from Sebring.
Yes, Giovanni Blackerby currently in 2nd place. Kind of in a little bit of a no man's land. About 2.5 seconds to Falkingham, who just set the purple lap of the race. And then 2.5 seconds behind him is Andre Castro. Blackerby has not set a valid lap time, apparently, at least over the previous lap. So, not sure what's going on there with timing and scoring, Jacob.
Possible that Blackerby's gone a bit too far off the course. You know, the likelihood that he maybe has just put a tire too far over, particularly in that that right-hander we saw just before he got onto the back straightaway here. It's not uncommon to hear drivers take that a little too wide and get an off track for that, and that'll invalidate your lap in its own right. We'll see if Blackerby gets in one this time as Ty Keela's under fire from John Wells as they head through Sunset Bend.
Yep, and just behind him, Jarrett Corey, defending champion, has moved up to the 7th position from 15th on the grid. Ty Keela has moved up to 4th from 13th on the grid. So we've got some big movers all in the Rogue Racing stable.
Corey goes purple that time in the 6th spot there. He just put down a 154.929. He's the only driver to have broken into the 154s. Falkingham ran a 155.671 that time by. So Corey may still get a shot to pick up a podium here tonight, even starting deep in this field if he can keep this pace up.
Yeah, and Corey has to get around his teammate of Ty Keela and John Wells. Wells has been hounding Keela in that number 9 machine for a long time. Corey just sneaks up the inside, gets a little twitchy on the power, gets up on that curve, and he's going to have to give up the position as Wells kind of positioned his car in a way that prevented Corey from really being able to accelerate out of that chicane. Corey goes for a big lunge on the brakes. He's going to get the move done, gives Wells a little tap as Wells tries to run him tight. And now Corey is up to 5th, now has to get around his Rogue Racing teammate. Keela runs wide. Now Corey has the run.
He'll be on the outside through the lefts, but he'll get the inside coming through the rights. You see Wells have a bit of a bobble behind Corey as well. They both have a bit of a time getting through there. Going to set up for the backstretch here. Wells is still looking for a way around Keela. He'll try to set up the move down the backstretch.
Yeah, and Keela is jumping on voice chat. Maybe not so happy with how much contact Wells has been making with his car. Looks like Wells has some scuffs on his front wing. Be curious to see if that causes any adverse effects. Meanwhile, Falkingham continues to lead. Jarrett Corey again sets the purple lap of the race. Lapping faster, his new lap has come in, but still lapping faster than the cars in front and at the same pace as Daniel Falkingham.
Yeah, we're on board with Aiden Kale right now. He just made a pass on John Wells through turns 2 and 3, I believe. He'll be trying to hunt down Ty Keela for 5th now. We saw them come to blows through Sunset Bend just a couple laps ago. We'll see if Kale can make a move stick this time as they head towards the hairpin. He's going to look to the outside, look to the inside. He's just trying to fake Ty Keela out at this point. Ty Keela will have none of it, stick to one line, and make it off the hairpin here with Kale still behind.
Yeah, but he had a lot of trouble in that traction zone. Kale had a great run. Keela goes defensive as they go into the corner. Oh, they bang wheels. Keela not really wanting to give ground here, and he manages to hold on to the position. Kale all over the back of the Rogue Racing driver. Goes off into the grass to try and make it happen. Loses a bunch of momentum. Keela is safe for now as they head through Tower, but Kale gets all kinds of loose trying to get the power down.
Yeah, he's trying to make this move as quickly as he can, knowing the longer he spends behind Ty Keela, the further Jarrett Corey up the road's going to get away from him. And that's potentially his opportunity to get back into a podium place here before this race concludes, slipping further and further away. They'll head down the backstretch once again. This is where Kale tried to set up a move just a couple laps ago on Ty Keela heading through Sunset Bend.
Yeah, and Keela immediately goes defensive. See the massive amount of spray kicked up there. Keela beaving all up and down the straightaway as Kale goes in way too hot, and he's going to lose the spot to John Wells. Keela doing everything he can to hold all those cars behind him and help out his teammate, and that is what you do for your teammate as Wells tries to take a look into turn number 1.
Yeah, Ty's been very committed to defensive lines through most of the corners that last time around. He's kind of stuck to that playbook last couple laps, so it's at least been consistent, if nothing else. But Aiden Kale trying his darndest to find any hole where he can find it. It's going to fall back to that 7th spot and have to rework all the way back to Ty Keela as we hit lap number 6 of 12 here from Sebring.
Yeah, and Kale needs to be careful. He's got some damage to his front wing now. And another thing, he nearly dropped it coming onto that straightaway because he got all up on the curb. And those curbs are a painted surface, Jacob. And I'm sure for you, we don't really need to explain that. For maybe some of the viewers at home, those curbs, when they're wet, they are slick. You are not going to be able to brake well. You're not going to be able to get traction very well. So you really want to avoid those in the wet.
Ty Keeler continues to hold on to that 5th spot over John Wells as they navigate towards the right-hander here. They'll work their way through that kind of quick double left, I believe, up next.
And Corey has caught Castro.
And we'll catch that in due time as Wells is still on the back of Ty Keeler in full force. We'll watch at least until they get onto the backstretch here, and then we'll catch the battle for 3rd. As Jarrett Corey's going to look for a move down the backstretch on Andre Castro.
Yes, and Corey went purple that last lap. Corey is on a mission right now. And just ahead of him, Giovanni Blackerby. Corey might be going from 15th to 2nd this race. It's good. As we're working lap 7, it's going to be a little bit too late unless he does some Shane Van Gisbergen style pace over Falkingham. But what a drive from Jarrett Corey so far.
Yeah, he wasn't able to get a lap down in qualifying. We figured at least the win would be off the cards, barring a large mistake from the front of the field. But he's proven to us that he can at least make it a podium finish here as he's working over the back of Giovanni Blackerby as we work lap number 7 here as they head down towards the hairpin.
Yes, and Blackerby is going to go defensive here. Corey's probably going to look to the outside. He commits heavily on the brakes. It's braking on the racing line, and that's difficult to do in the wet, Jacob, because all of that rubber, it's extra slick when it's wet. That rubber is not helping you, it's hindering you, but Corey makes it look easy.
Well, it wasn't that long ago with the lockout from the Luke Mansky Racing esports team at the time in the IndyCar Open Series here from a wet Sebring, and Jarrett Corey kind of played part in that podium lockout for that team at the time, so he's clearly figured out something at Sebring in the wet that works very, very well for him as he's got just Daniel Falkingham to catch to try to win this race here tonight.
Yeah, and he is within 5 seconds, 5 laps to go. Maybe Corey can pull something out of the hat, but once again, catching someone is one thing, passing them is another. Right now, Castro is all over Blackerby, our points leader. We'll see what Castro is able to do with the young driver in that Newgarden paint.
Yeah, here he's looking to the outside, down the backstretch on Blackerby. Both drivers on the push to pass. That's something we need to call out as well, as that doesn't get turned off in wet weather conditions. They're able to hit that button still, even with the track covered in moisture. Castro will try to make the charge on the button down the front stretch here. He'll look to the inside, makes contact with the inside wall, but he'll keep trucking. Trying to make this move stick.
He gets the inside. Blackerby really throws it in there, but really doesn't have anything for Castro, as that really was just move done, very decisive by Castro. Even though Blackerby was putting up a very strong defense, Castro really set that up by just taking the entry of Sunset easier than Blackerby. Blackerby threw it in there and really couldn't get the drive off the corner that Castro was able to do, and that gave Castro the run he needed to make the move.
Yeah, that last time by to kind of catch up on where Jarrett Corey's pulled time-wise, he ran a 1:53.573 that last time around. That is the fastest lap of the race. Falkingham last time around 1:55.085, so that's about a second and a half that Corey picked up that last time around. We'll see if he can pick up another significant amount of time here in the last couple laps here from Sebring.
Yeah, and to go back to that battle for 5th, Wells has not been hounding Tykila as much, but he is still there, still reminding the Rogue Racing driver of his presence. Wells nursing some damage. Keela has also kind of been in the wars. He's been kind of tapped and tagged by various people in the rear of the car. So possibly both cars not handling so good, as we see Wells looking up the inside of Keela as they head down the back straight into Sunset.
Here they come down the back straightaway here. Keela and Wells both on the inside. Wells will pop out to the outside. Ty's going to try to push him to the outer edge of the track just a little bit there. Going to both have a bit of a bobble on entry.
Yeah, and Keela really had to catch it and managed to save it, as Wells, I think, tags the tire bundles a little bit there. Doesn't look to have done any damage. but he's going to have to reset and refocus to mount the charge again.
And that's allowed Aiden Kale to work his way better into this picture between Keela and Wells here. You see lap machine, I believe, of David Clennon just up ahead of this group here.
And speaking of mounting the charge, Corey took another 7/10 out of Fockingham. That's not enough, as Kale nearly has a moment as well, just off the back of Wells in that fight for 5th. But yeah, no, if Corey wants to make the move, he needs to be gaining at least a second on average a lap, and that's just to catch Fockingham, let alone pass him. So Corey needs to dig deep right now and find something.
Now we'll see if that Rogue Racing driver can find the extra time these last couple laps. I think it's been a battle of consistency for Jarrett, trying to keep those laps as fast as possible around here at Sebring. Take a quick gander at push to pass since we mentioned it just a little while ago. Fockingham sits on 20 seconds to Corey's 40. Castro's on 20. Blackerby's on 25. Ty Keela on 23. John Wells on 9. Kale on 4. Hunter Smith either doesn't know that these cars have push to pass or opted has not used it yet. He sits on 65. Chris Wett's on 49. Robson Cardoso on 37. Then you can see the rest of the drivers push to pass figures through the rest of the field, and they're going to catch David Clennon on the backstretch here. It's going to introduce at least a bit of a challenge down the back here.
Yeah, and Ty had to kind of pop out, and Wells nearly got caught Clennon because he didn't see through the spray of Keela's car. Keela really seems to lose a lot of time in that Genevieve Le Mans complex, and that really allows Wells to catch up to him there. Wells going to take a look to the outside. Keela immediately goes to kind of try and take up as much of the track as he can, and really a defensive masterclass from Keela.
Well, Sophie, you said we were looking for 1 second for Corey. That last time by, he ran a 153.621 to Fokingham's 154.736. That is enough to close that gap up, but he's going to need to do that for the next 3 laps to close that gap full way close on tonight's leader.
Yes, he is about 2.8 seconds off of Fockingham. And again, we are working lap 10 here of 12. So time is running out, but can Corey do it? He gets a little bit of a moment there going through Coyer. So it goes through the double right here, and now heading into the right of Tower. One of the things, if I am Daniel Fockingham, I am looking nervously at that F3, but needing to remember that I got to just kind of take it easy. If I make any mistake, if I push too hard and make a mistake, I could just blow the whole lead that I have versus just maintaining it. So delicate balance for Fockingham, whereas Corey has to take every risk possible to try and get another position. And Aiden Kale is in the pits. Aiden Kale is in the pit lane, and he is out of the car.
He grabs the painted curb, goes around for a spin. He'll head to the inside wall. That'll put his IL-15 in the fence, and he likely broke at least one of the suspension arms on that machine, if not more than one, just given he opts to park it from the grass there. Corey again will go purple, so we watch him navigate turn number 1. Picked up another second that time by. I don't know. We might get a battle here coming to the line between Fockingham and Corey here for the top step.
Yeah, it might not be enough here because Fockingham is responding. He's not matching that pace, but he is getting it just enough that it's going to be incredibly close between these two competitors. So can Corey dig deep, and can Fockingham just find just enough pace to maintain his lead?
Yeah, we'll hop on board with Jarrett here as he continues his hunt. Quick Ford chimed in the chat, citing that there's some good racing going on here considering the weather, and we'll certainly agree and attest to that as we've watched the field fight through 10 laps so far. This is lap 11 of 12. Can Corey catch Fockingham before the finish here? He's been the fastest car on track pretty much all race long.
Yeah, and Hunter Smith currently being overtaken by Chris Wetz for the 7th position, while Robson Cardoso looks on from 9th as he is going to try and go around the outside into Coyer.
And we'll hop back to that battle real quick. Wetz is pulled away at least a little bit from Smith, as Smith's overtaking Cardoso, but now as they enter the right-hander, I believe, in Tower here, that's going to let Smith close back up just a little bit, but we got 3 cars still underneath the blanket here for the 7th spot.
Yeah, some excellent driving from all of them, giving each other enough space in these conditions, which is tricky to do. And Jarrett Corey has gotten within 1.4 seconds of Falkingham. But it's the white flag lap, Jacob. He's got to give everything he's got. 153.4 for Corey, 154.3 for Falkingham. Falkingham is doing just enough to keep Corey at bay, as we're going to go through this whole lap with Corey closing rapidly on the location of one Daniel Falkingham.
We'll hop back on board with him as he's just outside of about 1.25 seconds, now about 1.5 seconds, entering the hairpin off Falkingham. And I think the big thing for Falkingham is he's running the race that happened, not the race that could have been. He started at the front, didn't have to navigate through the entirety or the bulk of the field here like Jarrett did, failing to get a lap down in qualifying. He's just put in consistent laps at the front of the field, kept it out of the wall, out of the grass, kept the car pointed the right direction all night long, and that might just be enough here to close this one out.
He gets loose out of Coyer, but I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference. That allowed Corey to catch him by a couple of tenths, but he is really, as you said, just been driving the race that he needs to. Doesn't need to push, doesn't need to sacrifice anything, doesn't need to sit there and get in his own head, as Jarrett Corey might, about what could have been. They head down the back straightaway now. Gap is about 1.2 seconds. It's Daniel Falkingham's race to lose, Jacob.
Yeah, they'll head down the backstretch. Both drivers trying to burn up, push to pass. Jarrett will run out right now. Falkingham has another 5 seconds to spare down the front stretch. Corey within 1 second now as they head through Sunset. We'll continue the ride on board with him as they make it to the start-finish line. Not going to be enough. Daniel Falkingham will hold on over Jarrett Corey from Sebring, and we'll run through the rest of the finishers as they cross the line. It'll be Andre Castro holding on to the 3rd spot over Giovanni Blackerby, who will be next in line.
Ty Keela holds on for 5th despite the overwhelming assault from John Wells, who will come home in 6th. Then David Clennon, who is a lap down and will be in 16th, followed by Chris Wetz in 7th, Robson Cardoso in 8th, and then I believe that's going to be Hunter Smith in 9th, and then Luis Vasquez in 10th.
You got Cale Hogan in 11th, Numata, O'Hara will be the next car around, and then Alan Gomez-Selfa and Doug Hoyzel will be the last of the cars on the lead lap. We'll watch for them to come around and then run through the finishing lineup and get to talk to some of these drivers. See what they have to say after a wet and wild race here from Sebring. So it will be Daniel Falkingham with the win, 1.148 seconds over Jarrett Corey. Jarrett spent the whole race trying to charge him down, ultimately just ran out of time. Andre Castro holds on to 3rd. Giovanni Blackerby, the current points leader, will potentially continue to hold on that lead for the time being with a 4th place finish here tonight. Ty Keeler rounding out the top 5 following a great battle between himself, John Wells, and Aiden Cale, who unfortunately had an incident later in the going. Then you've got Chris Wetz, Robson Cardoso, Hunter Smith, and Luis Vasquez rounding out the top 10. Further down the order, you've got Cale Hogan in 11th, Takumi Numata following their off fairly early in the going. They come back to finish 12th. Kevin O'Hara in 13th, Alan Gomez-Selfa in 14th, Doug Hoyzel in 15th, last car in the lead lap. We saw David Clennon traveling around kind of in the middle of the lead lap pack there, who finished 16th. Aiden Cale will finish 2 down in 17th. Brandon McNulty out, and we saw Logan Edwards' incident that he was a part of in the opening corner of this race. He'll finish 19th and last here from Sebring.
Yeah, I feel sorry for whatever Minecraft village is currently being burned due to the poor result from Logan Edwards. As we await drivers to interview, just quick shout out to the likes of Ty Keela and, of course, Jarrett Corey from climbing deep within the field to get a top 5 in the case of Keela and a P2 in the case of Corey.
And we've actually got Daniel Falkingham already waiting for us, but we'll see if Andre Castro comes in. Actually, we'll start top to bottom. We'll do something different. See what Daniel has to say following his win here this evening. So we'll hunt down the automobile for the driver of the 3 this evening. There's that number 3 machine. The Lucky Charms car has kind of become an iconic part of the Indy NXT Series so far. We'll get him on up here, see what he has to say following this one from Sebring. Daniel, Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting. You got us?
I got you.
Well, you started at the front of the field tonight, and Jarrett Corey was trying to charge his way through it all night long. Maybe just ran out of time coming there late in the going. Walk us through your races. This seemed to be a very tricky track to navigate here in the wet.
Yeah, it was very tricky. That's an understatement. Just trying to come in and figure out like what if there was like any wet weather lines to run. But I mean, it was pretty traditional lines you could take. Maybe except the first there were some interesting lines I could have probably tried. But I was just driving with what I knew and what I felt comfortable with. Because I knew. I literally just jumped in, ran a few laps, just kind of just went for it in qualifying. We stuck around the pole, but I know how quick Jared was there throughout that entire. He was running us down every single lap. Because he definitely knew kind of like what the grip levels were way more than I did. But thankfully, we just had enough to where we could hold him off, and we would have put up a nice little defensive masterclass if he would have got there. But thankfully, we had the room to kind of just run our pace. But clearly, there was some time I left out there. But definitely, it's part of the game. Trying to be in the wet. But me, I love being in the wet. I remember we won here on over or a couple months ago over at Road Atlanta. So yeah, love some wet weather, and shout out to Jarrett for driving through the field the way he did. But glad it wasn't one more lap. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it was certainly kind of the story of the race that happened and not the one that could have been for you. Kind of walk us through what it was like being decently well away from the bulk of the competition early on and just running laps and then kind of rapidly realizing you had a hard-charging car trying to hunt you down in the closing stages here.
I thought we had it pretty covered how much in the early stage. Once I was hearing like the Irish fighter saying Jarrett was in the fastest laps, and he was coming to the field and he was knocking off our time every single lap in the second half of that race. And he kind of had to step up my game, but as long as I just kept on the race, I think we've been fine. Been there to see what would happen if he would have got. I felt confident enough that I knew what I had to do to hold him off if he did get there. So, yeah, definitely was a very interesting race again, to say the least, and just glad we could pull off another victory in the wet.
Certainly not a bad way to do it. A wet weather specialist you've become seemingly in the last couple times we've appeared here on the channel. Sophie, you got anything for Daniel tonight?
Daniel, you obviously said you were glad there was there wasn't another lap. What were you possibly thinking of doing just to see if you could maybe pick up some more pace? Because it did seem like you were getting faster towards the end. Were you just being more bold, being more later on the brakes? What were you doing to try and find some time here at a very wet Sebring?
Just kind of just driving the car to its limit and see like what that limit was, and I found it pretty quickly a couple of times, and I definitely don't think I could have pushed it near like as much as I could have, because I was doing a couple of practice laps. I was really struggling with locking the fronts, especially in a lot of the hard braking zones, and I feel like that kind of took some confidence out of me. But I did play around with brake bias, which I think helped it. But I know, just knowing like how fast Jarrett was there, I know there's way more time out there to find. But it's not too bad. I literally came in here, just ran a few laps, see how it was, and once I saw there was wet weather, once I saw there was like rain, like, all right, I like my chances, because you know what they always say, the wet really is the big equalizer. So definitely, I feel like equalized things out for us to get the pole, and obviously we just kind of held that gap, and thankfully. Yeah, like I said, it would have been interesting to see. Like, I mean, hopefully, like my spray coming off my car would have been enough to hold him off, because I know it's very hard to see when you're behind somebody. So hopefully, I was hoping the spray could have held him off a little bit if he got just walking with the water flying off my tires. So, but no, it definitely been interesting. Definitely got to go back to what he was doing to learn for next time.
Yeah, still a win in convincing fashion nonetheless. At the front, lights to flag from the pole for you here, Daniel. You know the drill. Friends, family, sponsors. Anybody like to shout out? Floor is yours.
Yep, just shout out to everyone who comes out races and makes it possible. Shout out to put on the these while we got a quick break in between the NASCAR qualifying series and the Coke Championship Series, which starts next Tuesday. And for be tuned. Yeah, shout out to you guys for broadcasting. Shout out to Jared on a heck of a race from the back there. And shout out to everyone watching. Hopefully we put on a good show tonight.
Yeah, well, certainly thank you for joining us once again here, Daniel. We'll hopefully catch you out next week as the series heads north of the border to Montreal. That'll do it for Daniel Falkingham, winner here tonight. We'll apologize for his technical difficulties in the microphone department, but we got through that one relatively unscathed, hopefully. We'll move down to Jarrett Corey, who finishes second here tonight. Bring him on up here. Jarrett, Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting. You got us?
Yep.
Well, it's the race of what could have been. You had to start deep in this field after not getting a lap down in qualifying. Made it all the way up to second. Nearly caught Daniel Falkingham in the closing stages here to pick up the win. Unable to do so. Walk us through some of the things you figured out having to charge your way through the field here tonight.
Yeah, I just sort of this is the first time I've honestly practiced in the wet. Every other wet race I've done only dry practice, 2 laps in the wet, and just gone, screw it. I'm going to just figure it out once I get there. I knew this was guaranteed to be wet from the start, so I knew just practice in the wet. I've already driven this car in the dry here. Just go for it in the wet. And I mean, I took all the things I learned at Road Atlanta and Catalunya, last season in the wet, as far as turning brake bias down, don't worry about the rear tires because they'll be fine. And I just went fast, and I'm just excited beyond words that I didn't win that at the pace I had. I just completely screwed up quali. I mean, to start with, the practice session for the race was less wet, and I think I just messed up my muscle memory and was braking too hard because I kept walking the fronts, and then trying to brake bias down, and then spun it in tower and destroyed the rear end, and then I didn't have time to get another lap, really, so I was just screwed. I just didn't make the progress at the start I needed to make, honestly. I spun on the first lap at exiting tower, so that was a tricky corner for me. I don't understand why. I guess it was just more slippy there than it had been in practice, and props to everyone behind me for not hitting me, so I was at least able to continue, but I was right behind John Wells when I spun, and it took until lap 4 for me to pass John Wells. So that's 4 laps I wasted passing people that I should have already been ahead of. And those 4 laps would have meant I would have beaten Daniel, I think. I don't think once I got him, I think I might have been able to have him. But yeah, he had just enough pace to hold on to it. At the end, I was only catching him in the first sector. I wasn't catching him in the final sector, really. It was that first part of the lap where I'd catch him by half a second, and it was just even for the rest of it. So, yep, just gutted by all the mistakes I made. That even come close to that was just a testament to my pace, but that pace should have been winning a race, not finishing P2.
Well, I think the big thing that I'll kind of follow up with is having to put your head back down and stay pointed the right direction following those errors in qualifying and the early stage of this race here. Obviously, we had 12 laps on offer. You said that the first 4 were kind of thrown away with that spin, but ultimately you came back and charged back through the bulk of the field and made it up onto the second step of the podium here. How are you able to really get under wraps here trying to get this car around a very tricky track here in Sebring?
I just remind myself I can still win this. I was on for a 54 in qualifying before I spun, and that was 3 seconds faster than Daniel. I knew with my pace that this sucks, but there's still a chance here. Just ask these people, go for it. And it was still almost there, so I was right to believe in myself. But just so close, but so far.
Yeah, certainly a race of what could have been had things gone a little bit differently. Sophie, you got anything for Jarrett tonight?
Well, Jarrett, obviously was a race of what could have been, but how did you find where you could get that pace, particularly through that opening sector that you were talking about? Seemed that you just had grip that no one else had. Was it just dialing back the brake bias? Was it anything you were doing on the tools? How exactly were you finding pace at a very wet Sebring?
Yeah, the tools I was using were whack. I mean, I was running 48.8% brake bias and only turned it up to 49.3 toward the end. And I know I was running 1-2 bars and then like turned the rear bar down to 1 because it was getting very loose at the end. I was probably just pushing it a bit too hard, or maybe the track conditions were sort of playing a role. I don't know, but part of that's tools, part of that's just practice. I mean, I did lap after lap in the wet, and I just kept pushing it harder and harder and harder to figure out where is the limit. And I just got close to it. I mean, I don't know how much practice Daniel did, or Andre did, or Aiden, any of those guys, or in these conditions particularly. So I might have just had the knowledge to know I can push this, and then the car will stick, that they didn't have.
And that certainly likely comes down to just the immense amount of experience you have in this car and other cars on the ladder, including now the bigger Indy car with a bit more seat time there. But you still pull out a solid finish here tonight. That's what builds championship runs, and you're looking to defend a title here in the Indy NXT Road Series. And this is not a bad way to do it with a P2 here from Sebring. You know the drill. Friends, family, sponsors. Anybody you'd like to shout out, floor is yours.
Yep. Rogue Racing, P1 Broadcasting, Ty for listening to me be very angry with myself. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, we'll certainly thank you for joining us once again, Jarrett. We'll hopefully catch you next week as the series heads north of the border to Montreal.
Yep, I'll see you there. Very scared of the Wall of Champions, but I'll see you there.
Yes, the Wall of Champions will hopefully not claim a champion next week, at least not one from this series. Go celebrate tonight, Jarrett. Have a good one.
You too.
That'll do it for a very dejected Jarrett Corey following a hard charge through the field, potentially multiple charges through the field, given the sounds of it from his race tonight. We'll throw Andre Castro up on the screen in that relatively new livery for him. No longer sporting that kind of iconic Guinness livery on that machine, but nonetheless, he'll bring that IL-15 home, the number 1 car in third. And Sophie, we had ourselves quite the eventful race right from the drop of the green, and it didn't really end until it ended here from Sebring.
Yeah, it was a wild race, a lot of incidents, a lot of action, but also just incredible battles, a lot of respectful driving, incredible defensive display from the likes of Taikila, incredible display of raw pace from the likes of Jarrett Corey. But in the end, it was Daniel Falkingham who managed the race, started out front, and did what he needed to do to ultimately come home in P1.
Yeah, and that will certainly do it for us here tonight on the channel for the Indy NXT Road Series. We'll be back tomorrow night with coverage of the Indy NXT Oval Series as we kind of send the IL-15s through a 30-year time machine. So we'll take on the 1987 version of the North Wilkesboro Speedway there. That'll be preceded by coverage of the IndyCar Oval Series top split from Nashville at 8:15 Eastern Time, alongside the Area 51 IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500K at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be joined by our coverage of Indy NXT Oval at the aforementioned North Wilkesboro Speedway. We'll cover the rest of the week's coverage tomorrow night when we head to that speedway in Wilkes County, North Carolina. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and making it possible to do what we do here on P1 Broadcasting, bringing you the great open wheel and other automobile action of the virtual world here on the iRacing service. We'll thank those that do all the difficult jobs all around the world. We'll thank tonight's competition for joining us and putting on a fantastic race. And we'll hopefully catch you next time, whether that be in the audience, on the track, or anywhere else where we can find you here on P1 Broadcasting. Have a good night, everybody. We will see you next time.